rehearsal man po ay para masiguro na smooth ang ating webinar session. Una, pakipalitan po ang format ng inyong pangalan. Maaaring consumer, space, full name, o di po kaya ay pangalan ng company, then your complete name. Kung masyadong mahaba naman po ang pangalan ng company, kahit acronym na lamang po ang gamitin. Pangalawa, please turn off your microphone and video during the webinar session unless you are requested by the moderator to speak. Pangatlo, para po sa mga tanong, we are encouraging everyone to click the raise hand button to directly address the speaker during the question and answer portion. Or you may send in your questions through the chat box. At panghuli, please avoid drawing or making annotations on the screen para hindi po ma-distract ang ating speaker at iba pang mga participants. Without further ado, let us begin this webinar session by singing the Philippine National Anthem to be followed by the invocation.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Tayang magiliw, kaya sa sirananan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, kuya ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa ganagang tutok sa simoy at sa langit ng pagkaw, ay hinanang tulang awit sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iingin, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidinig. Luwan ang araw ng walhati pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang inigaya ng bantay manangin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Loving Heavenly Father, we come to you this hour asking for your blessing as we are gathered together in this webinar. May your blessings of wisdom and guidance be upon us all for the sharing and impartation of knowledge and skills by our resource speakers, facilitators, and moderators. Bless also the participants so that they would be able to glean the information from this activity and share what we have learned in the spirit of your generosity. Lord, we bring you our prayers, our commitment, our gifts to you this day. Let us who have a keen dedication and awareness of your creation have courage and conviction that we are able to contribute to the sustainability of the earth. Inspire us as we make choices so that we will recognize the impact our lives have on our environment and our human family around the globe. Pour out your blessings upon us today, Lord. May each of our actions reveal our awareness that we are partners with you in the creation and sustainability of this earth that you have given to us to appreciate and enjoy. We ask this in the name of your Son. Amen.
Good morning po ulit sa ating mga participant. Tulad po ng nabanggit kanina, matututunan natin ngayong umaga ang initiatives on zero waste. Sana po pagkatapos ng webinar session na ito ay mas maunawaan natin ang kahalagahan nito sa atin bilang mga consumer. To formally start our session for today, we would like to call the Assistant Director of the Consumer Policy and Advocacy Bureau, Attorney Cheryl G. Carbonell. Good morning po, AD Che.
Good morning, Liza. Thank you very much. And good morning and welcome everyone to the 179th Consumer Care Webinar Series. So our theme for the month of June for our regular Consumer Care Webinar Series is promoting sustainable consumption and production initiatives. Ano po? So alam niyo po kasi yung sustainable consumption is one of the key advocacy initiatives ng Consumer Protection Group. And sustainable consumption is part of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals ng United Nations. And more importantly, yung sustainable consumption is aligned with one of our consumer responsibilities, that is environmental awareness. Gusto po namin sana na lahat ng consumer, kapag magkukonsumo o bibili ng isang produkto, maisip natin na yung ating pagkonsumo o pagbili, may impact din yan sa kapaligiran at saka sa kalikasan. From extraction of raw materials na gagamitin para sa pagbuo ng produkto, including yung tubig tsaka kuryente na gagamitin, and then yung transportation from the manufacturing site papunta sa tindahan kung saan natin ito nabibili o bibilhin. And until finally, magamit na natin siya at maubos na natin ang useful life nito, and then yung disposal din. So kaya kailangan po natin maging aware as consumers on our consumption patterns. And let's remember that our consumption has an impact to the environment. So for today, we are fortunate to have with us two organizations that champion zero initiative. So we have with us a Green Space and Upcycle Philippines. Thank you, Ms. Catherine Papio, the Chief Soil Mate of Green Space Philippines, and to the Chief Executive Officer of Upcycle Philippines, Ms. Adaviv Lasam. Thank you po very much, ma'am. And welcome to our webinar series. Salamat po sa pagpapaunlak. And si Pab is truly honored to have you today. So Green Space will share with us how we can divert food waste away from landfills, and while Upcycle will share their circular related initiatives like using cacao pods into packaging films. So these are interesting topics, so please stay tuned, and marami tayong matututunan today. So again, good morning everyone, and back to you, Glyza.
Thank you po, AD Che. Gaya nga po ng sabi ni AD Che, we are very fortunate to have with us today two very capable speakers po from two different organizations. To introduce our speakers, for our first speaker po, she is currently the Chief Soulmate of the Green Space Filipinas. She graduated Bachelor of Science in Electronics and Communications Engineering from the De La Salle University. Ms. Rina engaged in the business of waste diversion and resource transformation, strongly advocates that it's time we stop sending our food waste to the landfills. Having been trained as a climate reality leader by Al Gore in 2016 and completing a soil advocate course with international group Kiss the Ground, she ventured into an unending search for soil mates. Let us all welcome Ms. Caterina Papio. Good morning po, Ms. Rina. The virtual floor is now yours.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for that introduction, Liza, and good morning to the whole DTI team, and especially to Ediche. Thank you for inviting me here. At nakakatawa pong mapakinggan na you're doing all this effort, 179th session na pala, na doing all this effort para maturuan yung ating mga consumers tungkol sa sustainability, tungkol sa responsible consumption and production, and very much aligned po yung ating ginagawa dito sa mga bagay nito. So, I'd like to start sharing my screen now para maumpisahan na natin ang pag-share. Sana po okay po kayong lahat kung nasaan man kayo today, this morning. Again, I'm very happy and excited to share with you what we do. So, eto po, share ko na yung screen po. So, is it okay, Glyza?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Let me start. So, Green Space, I'm Marina Papio, Chief Soilmate. Soilmate ang tawag namin, Kasi mahirap daw maghanap ng soulmate. Kayo ba may mga soulmate na? Kung wala pang soulmate, soilmate na lang muna. Yung mga makakatulong natin to make sure that none of our waste would end in a landfill, madadamage yung ating planeta. Pero by being soilmates, we're taking care of the planet. And ay papakita ko sa inyo kung paano natin to maaaring gawin. So in Green Space, ang objective namin or gusto namin gawin is to create new destinations and purpose for food waste. So new destinations dahil alam naman natin kung saan napupunta ang mga waste natin ngayon, landfill, at gusto natin tong mabago. To do that, our goal is to, and our goal is to actually help as many households and businesses to make the change from landfillers to land healers. So landfillers, no, hanggat po tayo merong mumunting supot ng basura na inaabot sa ating mga garbage hauler, alam na nating ihahatid yun ano, sa dump site or sa landfill. So, guilty pa tayo ng pagla-landfill. And habang lumalalim ang ating awareness sa waste management at sa mga recycling, upcycling efforts, mga alternative na sustainable, more sustainable products and services, gradually nag-shift na tayo no, from landfilling or from being landfillers to land healers. Kasi the moment na ibahin natin yung pagtingin natin sa ating basura, lalo na sa food waste, matutulungan pala nitong mapaganda ang ating lupa, maging healthy ang ating environment, at lahat yan nakakonekta sa maraming bagay. So, di ba, the interconnectedness of things, konektado din yun sa health natin, well-being natin. So, yun yung aming battle cry. No? Let's make the change. It's urgent and it's very important. From landfillers to land healers. And specifically, ang pag-uusapan natin ay food waste. Tayong mga Pinoy, mahilig pong kumain, di po ba? Kayang-kaya nating mag-isip ng mga bagay na isi-celebrate natin, mga mumunting wins ng ating buhay. Pagpaya nating magpapansit, bumili ng spaghetti at ng masayang chicken. So, lagi may food waste. Pag prepare pa lang ng pagkain, may food waste na. Pagkatas kumain, merong talaga mga unavoidable na kailangan nating i-dispose. And sana tong empty plate na to be a reminder na maging responsible tayo sa ating consumption. Huwag pinupuno yung plato tapos hindi naman pala uubusin, itatapon lang. So, isipin natin kung parang maging mindful tayo no sa ating pagkain. So, bakit naman food waste? Bakit nausipan namin mag-focus sa food waste? Kasi alam niyo po, mahigit 2,000 tonelada, actually 2,175 tons daw of food waste ang tinatapon ng NCR lang yun ha, NCR daily. Lahat yan nanggagaling sa ating mga bahay kung saan may tao, saan may kainan, source yan ng food waste. So from kakaunting food waste to maramihang food waste ng mga restaurants, hotels, resorts. So within NCR, ganyan na karami ang pinapadala natin sa ating mga landfill. And ito po no, sa pakikipagtulungan natin and partnership with WWF, we have this information, this data na mahigit kalahati ng tinatapon natin is actually food waste or biodegradable waste. Pagkatapos yung 52% na yon na biodegradable waste, mahigit 80% doon food waste. So tinatapon, nasasayang, napupunta sa landfill. Imagine nyo, lahat ng the waste natin na food, hindi lang yung food yung nasayang kasi yung pera from producing the food, all the packaging, the manpower, water, or resources na nagamit, nasasayang kung itatapon lang. Sabi nga daw, kung ang food waste daw ay isang bansa, siya ang third largest emitter ng greenhouse gas. Habang nabubulok po lahat ng food waste na hinatid doon sa landfill, it produces methane na pupunta sa ating atmosphere at nagpapalala ng ating kinakaharap na climate crisis. Ramdam natin yan, di ba, sa palala na klase ng mga pag-ulan, pagbaha. So, paano kung maiiwasan o mababawasan man lang natin yung mga food waste na yun na pupunta sa landfill? Sa programa po ng WWF Philippines, kung saan tinulungan nila ang mga businesses na maging mas sustainable. So, from sourcing ng kanilang mga ingredients, sa klase ng pagpeprepara na yung tipong lahat ng parte ng ingredients magagamit, walang masasayang. At kung meron mang surplus na pagkain, mahanapan ng pagdodonatan. At sa kaduluduluhan, kung meron pa rin itatapon, huwag nating hayaang itapon ito at makarating sa landfill. Mag-compost tayo. So dahil po dyan, nagkaroon ng partnership ang Green Space kasama ng WWF at magkatulong po kaming gagawin yung sabi nating creation of new destinations and purpose for food waste. At uumpisahan natin yung new destination sa source, which alam naman natin, no, RA 9003 pa lang, sinasabi na segregation at source, yung pagiging mindful natin sa source pa lang, alam na natin kung ano nangyayari at paano gagawin sa ating mga ways. So, at source, nakasanayan na nating ilagay lang sa mga supot. So, what if mag-aral tayo ng ibang paraan kung saan meron tayong composting bucket, doon na lang ilalagay lahat ng ating food waste. Total, sinushoot nyo naman sa basurahan, ibahin lang natin, magiging na siyang may sariling bucket. So, yun ang unang destination ng food waste. Tapos, kung halimbawa naman may mga tao, no, na organization na magagaling nang mag-segregate, minsan nakaka-frustrate, nakaka-disappoint kung makita mo after mo nga mag-segregate, the same truck would pick up your segregated waste. Tapos alam natin, ay, mapupunta lang sa the same destination, which is the landfill nga, no? So what if all the segregated waste will actually go to a proper destination, a composting site? At yan po yung gustong gawin ng Green Space na magkaroon ng maraming local na composting sites, barangay, community composting, nang sa gayon, hindi na kailangang lumayo ng food waste, no? Hindi na kailangang ihatid sa malalayong lugar. Pero within the community, doon pa lang mako-compose na yung food waste. At doon pa lang, nagkaroon na ng bagong purpose yung food waste. Hindi na siya mag-create ng pollution sa landfill dahil dito, nagawa na natin siyang compost at magiging kapaki-pakinabang na siya, lalo marami nang nagde-develop or nag-create, nag-establish ng mga urban gardens. Ano po? Tapos sa city, hindi naman ganoon kadami ang source ng healthy na lupa. So, yung tinatapon natin na food waste, gawin na nating compost na kapaki-pakinabang sa ating mga urban gardens. So, just to share as well, ang Green Space naka-focus din primarily sa aming composting services. So, bilang nakatira tayo sa city, common na namomroblema tayo sa space or sa ating mabilis na buhay, namomroblema tayo sa time. So, for whatever reason, if you are able to do your composting, well and good. Kung hindi naman, kung may mga challenges, huwag tayong mag-alala at hindi yun reason din para hindi ka na magpo-compose. So we are offering composting services, meaning subscription-based siya. So magsusubscribe kayo dun sa service, po-providean kayo ng buckets, at ilalagay nyo doon yung inyong mga food waste. Kapag puno na, sasabihan nyo kami na puno na yung bucket nyo para we will exchange the bucket. Kukunin namin yung full bucket, papalitan na naman namin ng empty bucket. We'll take care of composting it. Basta kayo, ang role nyo is to make sure na all your food waste would be properly layered inside the composting bucket. And dahil gusto nating makapag-service and mas maraming ma-reach na mga households and businesses, isa pang produkto ng aming partnership with WWF Philippines ay ang pagkakaroon ng mobile app. So meron na pong app kung saan yung Soilmate, you can check it out, kung saan dun makakapag-subscribe ka na using the app, at kapag puno na yung iyong bucket, gagamitin mo lang yung app to book an exchange. So we call it book a bucket. So you book a bucket exchange para makuha namin yung puno at bigyan kayo ulit ng empty. So yun na yung bagong cycle or lifestyle ng inyong food waste. Galing sa bahay or office nyo or business nyo, magpupunta siya sa bucket, you exchange it with an empty. So kayo tuloy-tuloy lang na magpo-collecta ng food waste, habang kami naman ay dadalhin yung mga na-collect na food waste sa mga partner na composting sites, turn it into compost, help urban gardens. Tapos diba tayo din ulit ang makikinabang ng mga napoproduce ng mga gardens natin. So quickly, I'll share a video kung tungkol saan yung mobile app na ginawa ni WWF Philippines for Soilmate. Yan po. So, ngayon no, sa ano na lang, pag pindot-pindot na lang sa phone, mauubos natin sana ang mga food waste natin. So just to share, mga around 2019 when we started doing pilots with clients, yun nga lang natigil no, nung pandemic. Pero yun yung biglang wala ng food waste. So, isipin mo, wala ba talagang food waste? Just so happen na ang mga kliyente namin nung una ay mga malls, offices. So, nung nag-pandemic at lahat tayo ay natrap sa ating mga bahay, napunta sa mga kanya-kanyang bahay yung food waste, no? Wala na sa labas. Pero may food waste pa rin. Kung nasa lang tao, nandun ang food waste. So, sa course ng pandemic, ginawa namin, in-offer na din namin sa households yung services. So, meron na ding composting services for households para sa bahay nyo, maaari nyo na ding gawin. And just to share, we've already diverted over 37,000 kilograms of food waste dito sa aming bucket exchange program. And we are currently servicing 165 household and business subscribers na close to 3,000 bucket exchanges na yung nangyayari no, between green space, our soil mates na masipag na nag-iipon ng kanilang food waste sa mga bucket nila at yung mga partner nating gardens and farms kung saan tayo currently nakakapag-compost. At ito na din yung a few sa mga sineservice natin na mga clients at partners. At tamang-tama, no, binabanggit kanina na responsible production and consumption. Tamang-tama po, nagpa-participate po kami actively sa programa ni NEDA na Stakeholders Chamber on the Sustainable Development Goals. Kasi po, yun nga yung SDG 12. At alam niyo po ba na specifically yung Target 12.3 is about food waste and food loss. Yun pa po, no, pinag-uusapan natin ngayon, food waste, kasi yun yung nakakarating sa ating mga consumer, yung binili natin sa supermarket, nasa mga plato natin, na mga natitira na tatapon, hindi pa nga natin dito sinasama yung usaping food loss. So yun yung nangyayari from the farm, from logistics, na kung saan bago pa makarating sa atin yung food waste, marami na ding natatapon. So, kaya yung efforts na gagawin natin, yung food waste natin, ano ba yung pwedeng gawin? So, sabi natin, no, ano ba yung pwedeng natin gawin sa food waste new destination sa bagong bucket? Hindi lang po ito basta isushoot na lang natin sa bucket yung food waste. We're teaching the method Bokashi. So, Bokashi composting. Bokashi is actually a Japanese term. It means fermented organic matter. So yun po yung key around Bokashi composting. It's fermentation. So, hindi lang pala pagkain ang pina-ferment. Di ba po, familiar tayo, paggawa ng atsara, paggawa ng kimchi, even ang paggawa ng wine, ng beer, mga fermentation process yan. Ano? So, pati food waste sa ferment. Bakit natin sa fermenting food waste? Kasi yung process ng fermentation, it prevents rotting. So, imbis na mabulok siya, nabuburo siya. At sa paraan na yon, sa ginagamit natin na sa pagbubukashi, walang mapoproduce na mabahong amoy, yung nabubulok na mabahong amoy, may iwasan natin yon at may iwasan natin ang peste, di ba? Kaya natin gustong-gustong ma-dispose yung ating food waste dahil alam natin pag inabot na yun ang kinabukasan, uuuri na, lalangawin na, magkakaipis na. So yun yung mga bagay na ayaw natin about food waste or about the whole process of composting. We worry about those things, ano, kaya hindi natin ma-experience sa bokashi composting. And with bokashi composting, ang mga kailangan mo lang talaga ay yung bucket and most especially the Bokashi brand. So, yung buckets, maaari kang gumawa ng sarili mong bucket. Importante lang dyan na mahigpit yung takip. Yung nakikita nyo sa picture, no, may gripo pa. Pwedeng may gripo or pagpatungin nyo yung dalawang balde na may butas sa ibabaw para nakukuha nyo sa ilalim yung katas na we call it the bokashi juice kasi very useful din siya. Coming from the fermentation process, it's full of beneficial bacteria. And ang naggagawa ng fermentation process ay yung mga beneficial microbes, mabubuting bacteria na nandito sa Bokashi brand. So yung Bokashi brand na yan, gawa lang yan sa darak, rice bran, ano, darak, hinaluan ng carbonized rice salt, tapos ferment siya gamit ang isang microbial inoculant ng tawag ay EM1. Kaya ang isang dakot ng bokashi bran ay punong-puno ng mabubuting microbe or bacteria. Pag hinalo natin ngayon yun sa ating food waste, they work inside the closed bucket, tightly sealed bucket to ferment the food waste. So, simple lang siya. Ang kailangan mo lang talagang pag-aralan is, we call it the art of layering. So, you want to be able to layer your food waste and the bokashi bran inside your bucket. And ito lang yung gagawin mo every day. So, hanggang sa mapuno yung bucket mo. So, imagine lasagna. Ayaw mo naman ng puro pasta, ng puro sauce, puro cheese. So, gusto mong ma-layer siya properly. You want to avoid very thick layer of food waste, tapos lalagyan mo lang sa ibabaw ng thin layer of bokashi bran kasi bago pa marating ng bacteria yung ilalim, mabubulok na. So, you want a good layer of the bokashi bran and the food waste. Tapos, kailangan maintindihan natin sa bokashi composting ay yung amoy. Hindi natin sasabihin wala siyang amoy, pero hindi siya mangangamoy dahil hindi siya mabubulok, hindi siya magkakaroon ng yung amoy na bulok na pagkain, which alam natin nakakasukang amoy yun, di ba? Ayaw natin yun. Pero maamoy natin fermented. So, fermented, more of, imagine, close to suka na sweet and sour smell, especially the way na ginagawa ang bokashi bran, hinahaluan siya ng molasses. So, dun yung manggagaling yung naaamoy na sweet smell. So, sweet, sour yung amoy niya. So, yun ang amoy ng bokashi bran. At pag nag-umpisa ka ng mag-layer sa bucket mo, yun din dapat yung amoy ng iyong bucket every time na bubuksan mo siya. Fermented na amoy. So, wala na nung mabahong amoy. Even if it takes you weeks or months bago mapuno yung bucket mo, walang problema. So, marami sa aming mga subscribers na nakatira sa condo, and usually the smaller households, mga 1 or 2 people lang sila na nakatira sa bahay. So, napakakonti ng food waste nila. It takes them 1 month bago makapuno ng isang maliit na bucket ng food waste, yung 16-liter bucket ng food waste. And nung matutunan na nila yung proper na pagle-layer, they don't worry about nangangamoy na basura sa kanilang unit. And then, alam mo, may pa-bonus pa yung bokashi composting kasi na-mention ko kanina the bokashi juice. So, as you layer your food waste and your bokashi bran, habang nandun siya sa loob ng bucket mo, which is set up to have a strainer inside, kumakatas, kung meron mong kumakatas doon sa mga food na nilagay mo, that bokashi juice is very useful. It's also full of the beneficial microbes. So, maaari mo siyang gamitin sa mga drains sa bahay, like sa lababo, sa toilet. Kasi all those microbes, they feed on fats, oils, grease, so all mga organic waste. Food nila yan eh. So, mag-enjoy sila na merong doong organic waste kasi makakain nila yan, and they would increase in number, so more of them would be digesting the fats, oils, grease. And very useful din siya na ibalik sa lupa kasi those microbes will work well with the natural soil microbes. Dadami yung mikrobyo sa lupa. At ito isang example na isinare sa atin ng soilmate natin from Davao. Isinare niya yung picture ng kanyang halaman from paso na halos wala ng tangkay at mga dahon. In-apply niya yung kanyang bokashi juice doon sa soil. Sa soil ha, hindi doon sa dahon kasi iniiwasan natin diretsong spray sa dahon dahil acidic yung bokashi juice, yung nature niya because of the fermentation. Maaaring masunog yung dahon into the soil. And yan, after 30 days, ganyan nakaganda yung plant niya. So, dahil maganda, healthy yung soil, mas nakukuha ng plants yung nutrients from the soil. So, ano ba yung kinikwento kong pagle-layer? Here's another video na makita nyo na ano ba yung ginagawang pagle-layer ng food waste at ng bokashi bran sa ating bucket. So, here's So nakita niya no, yung pagle-layer nung food waste at bran sa loob ng bucket. At pagkatapos nun, napuno na yung bucket, iwan siya ng 2 weeks to let it fully ferment ng walang hangin. Hindi na binubuksan yung bucket. At yung susunod ay yung pag-compost na. So yung bucket, it's a fermentation bucket. So, hindi magiging compost yung food waste na sa loob ng bucket nyo. Baka magulat kayo pagbukas nyo. Ba't nandito pa rin yung mga gulay at yung mga balat ng saging or whatever? Hindi siya magiging compost sa loob ng bucket, pero fermented na yun, hindi nakikita ng mata because of the fermentation process, na breakdown na yung structure ng food doon, yung mga food waste. So, once na ihalo na natin siya sa soil, as shown in the video, yung ginawa niya ay meron siyang soil factory lang, no? Plastic bin, like in the photo, an old laundry basket, i-layer mo naman doon ngayon, layering ulit, art of layering, i-layer mo naman yung fermented na food waste mo with soil. Now we need the soil microbes to finish off the decomposition. So, dahil na-breakdown na yung food, mabilis nang matatapos ng natural soil microbes yung pagko-compost na yon. Kaya in 4 to 6 weeks, lalo na kung puro fruit and vegetable yung naman ng iyong food waste, mabilis na magiging siyang compost. Traditionally, pwede mo naman talaga na siyang ilubog, maghihintay ka ng mga months bago mo makuha yung harvest yung compost mo. Pero pagka nakabukashi siya, shorter time. So, mas mare-reuse mo agad yung either may garden ka, naghukay ka ng paglulubugan, or meron kang pwede mo ding ilagay diretso na sa mga plant boxes, giant pots, doon mo na i-layer para after some time, diretso magtatanim ka na. So basically, that's what we're trying to do. Yung ating dating tinatapon, kinompost natin kasi we want to be able to help build nutrient-rich soil. And with that, kapag merong healthy na lupa, meron din tayong maaasahang healthy na pananim. And I always love sharing this photo ng mga kaibigan natin from Bokashi, Myanmar. Kasi not just the giant upo, pero yung buong garden nila sa Myanmar, nakuha nila yung yard nila na puro buhangin. Hindi madaling makapag-grow ng pananim sa buhangin. Pero ang ginawa nila, kinolekta nila yung mga food waste sa katapat nilang palengke, lalo yung mga nagtatapon ng mga fruit and vegetable peelings. Yung nakikita yung mga drums doon sa likuran, dyan nila binokashi yung kanilang mga kinokolektang food waste. At hinukay nila lahat nung mga spaces sa kanilang yard. Nagtira lang sila ng paglalakaran ng mga brick na steps. Pero after ilang months, naging sinasabi talaga nila na story of regeneration, na regenerate nila, napaganda nila yung lupa sa kanilang yard, na nung nagtanim sila, ganyan kaganda yung inaani, kalalaki pati yung inaani nila. Dito naman yung partner natin, Good Food Community, Good Food Sundays, bago nag-pandemic, every Sunday may market, kinokolekta natin yung food waste, nakabukashi siya. So yung partner natin, si Gio of Elements of Tomorrow, dinala niya sa isang partner nila na farm kung saan sila nagtatanim ng eggplant, talong So makikita niyo sa picture, yung kanang bahagi, walang food waste yun, diretso nagtanim lang, pero yung kaliwang bahagi, inilubog doon yung mga fermented na food waste bago nagtanim. So makikita nyo kagad yung difference na gaano kalago yung napaka-healthy talaga ng soil because of the compost, because of the food waste na inilagay doon. So just to then add more kung saan ba napupunta yung mga food waste, ito yung mga existing nating partners. So merong urban garden sa Quezon City under the Food Today, Food Tomorrow program ng Slow Food Community. Yung tinulungan na rin community na mag-set up ng sarili nilang community garden, at nagdadala tayo doon ng mga food waste, ng mga buckets, drums of food waste na inilulubog doon sa kanilang place. Meron silang space na ginawa, no, kung saan tayo nag-compost, and then ginagamit nila yung compost dun sa kanilang garden. Ang description nila, ang OA daw tumubo ng kanilang mga halaman, mabilis umusbong, matataba ang from the stems to the dahon. So enjoy na enjoy sila. At meron din tayong partner na isang organic farm naman sa Laguna. They welcome all the food waste. So in Caliraya Farms, not a single drop of chemicals kanilang farm. So they really do everything to make healthy soil out of the food waste na nanggagaling sa ating mga subscribers. Imagine niyo po, tumatawid pa ng tumatawid pa ng bangka yung mga food waste para makarating dun sa farm. So instead na sa landfill siya mapunta, dito dinadala sa farm. And syempre eventually to also cut on carbon footprint, we want to also develop the system locally para yung community nila around the farm ay matuto na din mag-compost at yun na yung i-compost nila sa farm nila. And tayo mahilig sa rewards, so ginawa namin sa Green Space na every time you book an exchange through the app, you earn points, we call it compost credits, and yung naiipon mong compost credit, pwede ka ngayon mag-request kung gusto mo ng compost, o kaya naman may gusto kang pagbigyan ng compost, pwede mong piliin doon sa mobile app. Kung naman marami ka ng points, pwede ding ipagpalit sa mga gulay bags. Currently, we're getting our gulay bags from Good Food Community. So what's next? I hope you decide to get started na mag-compost na and talk about it with your family, with your friends. Sabi ko nga, hindi common na pag nakita-kita tayo ng mga kaibigan, kapamilya, nagtatanong tayo, kamusta mga food waste sa inyo? Nagko-compost na ba kayo? Hindi yun parte ng usapan. Pag nagpaplano tayo ng kainan, ng handaan, hindi kasama sa plano na kung anong gagawin natin sa food waste pagkatapos. So sana after today nang narinig at natutunan nyo about food waste, isama nyo na yon sa conversation. Hindi na dapat natin tanong kung magko-compost ba ako, magko-compost ba tayo. Hanapin niyo po yung paraan ng pagko-compost na bagay sa household nyo, sa lifestyle nyo. Maaaring hindi bukashi, marami pong paraan ng pag-compost. Ang importante talaga ngayon, huwag na natin paratingin sa landfill. So maaaring magsariling composting kayo sa bahay nyo. You just get all the materials, or kung hindi man kaya, mag-subscribe na lang doon sa composting service. Kung ano man yon, importante is to get started with composting at matigil na yung pagpapadala ng ating food waste sa landfill. So, dyan po nagtatapos ang pag-share ko. I'm going back to this change. Very important, very urgent na sana gawin natin lahat, maging soilmate kayong lahat, at let's make the change from landfillers to land healers. So I hope you have the chance to check out our sites, social media, ayan po naka-post ngayon sa screen, to learn more. Maaring hindi ko na-share lahat ng mga steps, pero you can learn more, reach out to us if you have questions. So thank you very much for allowing me to share this morning.
Thank you po for your very informative presentation, Ms. Rina. Yan po, let's speak the change from landfillers to land healers. Let us now proceed po to the next speaker. She is the founder of the Upcycle Philippines, an online community that fosters awareness on upcycle as a system for environment conservation and circularity. Currently, she is a special education teacher based in Illinois, USA. She is a climate reality leader trained last June 2020. As part of communicating her advocacy on upcycling, she took the opportunity to be featured on various media programs, namely Green Living on ANC, Pambansang Almusal Mornings at GMA Regional TV, Ang Tinig Klima, Doctor's Orders, Manila Bulletin, Cosmo PH, When in Manila, and Tribune.net. Presently, Teacher Ada is taking a certificate course on circular economy at Delft University of Technology via online. She finished her bachelor's degree in humanities with specialization in development education at the University of Asia and the Pacific and completed her master's degree in special education at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Now let us all welcome Miss Maria Adaviv Melia Lasam. Good morning po, Miss Ada. The virtual floor is now yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Liza. Thank you so much for the introduction. Before I continue, may I know if naririnig po ba ako na maayos? Is it the line check?
Yes, ma'am, loud and clear po.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you very much, Department of Trade and Industry, Consumer Policy and Advocacy Bureau for inviting me to communicate my advocacy. Please allow me to share my screen. Nakikita po ba, Miss Liza?
Yes, ma'am.
Go back to the... There you go. So the title of my talk is Communicating Zero Waste Initiatives, which is the backbone of the advocacy. And I understand that the theme of this webinar series is zero waste initiatives. So we are expecting that the topic will revolve around ideas on how to minimize our waste or eliminate wastes. Well, on a side note, there's no such thing as waste. From what I got from Miss Rena's talk earlier, there's no such thing as waste if you know how to manage what goes into our households and we maximize them until the end of service or their end of life. But let's shift the topic a bit because the topic of my talk is communicating zero waste initiatives as the backbone of the advocacy. The key word is communicating, and I want to communicate what I do, and that alone is a zero waste initiative. So sure, I thrift clothes, I consume a plant-based diet, avoid single-use plastics, and overall live intentionally. And what was my reason behind that? How did it all start? It started when I was an expectant mom. I struggled with keeping my personal things in order. I had a lot of stuff, super dami, owing it to my being a shopaholic, especially when I worked in another Asian country, then returned to the Philippines to start a family. So I decided to let go a lot of things, and some of them were to be thrown away. However, instead of actually sending them to the landfill, I looked up the internet for ways to repurpose them and came across the term upcycle. So, sa madaling salita, upcycle started as a hobby. Kita nyo naman, for example, this heart decor is made from t-shirt yarn. T-shirt yarn is made from t-shirts, and then I transformed it into a yarn or tarn. And this drawing here is, I used makeup, old makeup, to doodle images like this one. So upcycle started as a hobby until I gave birth to the baby. I experienced parenthood exhaustion but continued with my crafting. It was my outlet. I enjoyed recreating something new like transforming denims into bookmarks. I eventually created an online community to gather people who upcraft. I believe that an online community is the most effective way to expand the network and meet like-minded people. So after creating Upcycle Philippines group, I have virtually met people who link upcycle to circular economy, regenerative farming, and biomimicry. Never knew that upcycle is a much bigger term other than creatively repurposing things that we otherwise want to throw away. I started to learn more about upcycle and thereafter, created my vision mission for Upcycle Philippines. Upcycle Philippines connects practices inclusivity, meaning no one is left behind in the fight for a greener planet, envisions a positive transformation in all aspects of society for a greener environment, and envisions reutilization of resources and upgrading our lifestyle. So, so why specifically an online community? By the way, these were my activities before the pandemic. So I had exposures to various institutions, from schools to local government units, and to different media channels. So as I was saying earlier, the vision of Upcycle Philippines is to connect I mentioned the mission of Upcycle Philippines earlier. Now, I'm just gonna mention the vision of Upcycle Philippines, which is to connect, to practice inclusivity, to transform, to reutilize, and to upgrade. Definitely, there were challenges and anxieties along the way. Part of being an advocate is to simply practice what I preach. It was not easy shifting from one lifestyle to another. The key was to communicate and connect with like minded people. And I found my niche in the likes of Miss Rina and other fellow advocates who envision a greener environment. That alone is a zero waste initiative. Modesty aside, it's very low key but super impactful. So ito po ang aking mission for Upcycle Philippines. Again, I foster support for local talents and resources. I promote conservation of resources and promote circularity and, well, facilitate or have the big companies close the recycling loop. So the journey continued up until we celebrated anniversaries of Upcycle Philippines. So this was our first anniversary. We were very few. There were very few members of Upcycle Philippines group who attended the event, and then in 2019, this is 2019. So medyo lumawak na siya because I was able to expand networks or gather more people who are interested. And then in 2020, we celebrated our anniversary online where I was able to invite speakers my fellow climate reality leader and Dazzle Labapis, Mr. Lawrence Dumagbas, he's also an advocate for circular economy, and Mr. Gio Almoite, he talked about permaculture or regenerative farming. And there's also Mr. Demi Abarquez who talked about DIY upcycle. That was in 2020. And then in 2021, I unfortunately wasn't able to come up with something for our 4th anniversary because that time I transferred to the US, and I had a fair share of struggles and challenges when I settled here in this new country. Everything was new. I had to learn the ropes in teaching special education in classrooms here in the United States. But hopefully, on our 5th year this October, we can come up with something new and something fun to celebrate our victory or our 5th year. So as well, going back to the relevance of communicating our eco-friendly initiatives these times, our eco-conscious habits have sprung up from what we see or hear in the media. We are aware of the impact that our eco-conscious habits are making. We hear news about the environmental crisis, therefore, we developed a sense of urgency to save the planet, and as much as we can, we take our part in conserving our environment's resources. So, nakita nyo naman yung mga previous activities namin. I've had my talks, I've had my workshops with various organizations. And then when the pandemic came, everything was migrated online. I still continued communicating the advocacy through workshops and speaking engagements with various organizations. And then I think the highlight of my activity was coming up with bazaar with children with special needs. Um, I used to teach in a therapy center in the Philippines, and I was assigned to handle a class and transform common household wastes into simple projects like jewelry boxes made from playing cards, um, paper, what they call this, Christmas trees made from newspapers. What else? If you could look into my page there, if you could visit Upcycle Philippines page, you could see that their projects are displayed there. And then we were given the opportunity to sell our handmade projects in a particular mall in the Philippines, and we were able to raise a very humble amount just to cover the cost of the materials that we need to come up with, the materials that we need for our future projects. However, the pandemic happened, so everything stopped. And the next thing I know, I'm already here. Ayun. So that's one highlight of the event. And then another one is greener reads. I have what I call greener reads since I was a freelance storyteller of a children's publishing house. I hope you don't mind if I mention it. It's Adarna House. Um, I I was a freelance storyteller, and I tapped that particular resource, which is to use their books to read to various audiences. I tap my fellow storytellers to read a book online. So it's a story reading session for for example, every environmental event that we had in the Philippines. For example, last November 21, we had National Environmental Awareness Month. So I had a fellow storyteller read Bayan ng Basura. Ayun, tapos meron din kaming Mangroves Day reading session where someone read about Bakawan. So I asked permission from Adarna House to use their books. Unfortunately, I had to take down the videos after that particular reading session because yun yung terms and conditions ng Adarna House. Overnight lang yung publicity ng reading session. But it's a good initiative because hindi lang adults ang ginagather ko to listen to the advocacy, kundi pati mga bata. And I believe that we should start the children when they're young to learn more about environment conservation. And one way to learn about environment conservation is to read or to listen to stories about that particular topic. So I have greener reads. I haven't had greener reads after I left the Philippines, and hopefully, maybe, who knows, this year I can come up with greener reads and tap fellow storytellers here in the United States to read maybe their local stories or to share their stories about environment. So watch out. And then Miss Che Carbonell earlier mentioned that Upcycle Philippines produced alternative packaging made from calamansi rinds and taco pods. It was actually Miss Julian Stephanie Fabe, the scientist who came up with this. So I was given the chance to interview Miss Julian Stephanie Fabe, and I always ask her if I could share her story because she needs our support. Our local scientists, our Filipino scientists need our support to promote their researches, no? Especially researches or projects like this that help promote sustainability in the Philippines. So The particular scientist that I have interviewed last Environment Day, or that event was in April, was Miss Julian Stephanie Fabie, and she was the one who came up with alternative packaging made from calamansi rinds and cacao pods. The interview is still posted in Upcycle Philippines page. Just type her name in the search box, Julian Stephanie Fabie and Upcycle Philippines, and there you will find my interview with her. Very good person, and I'm proper. Maybe in the future I can tie up with her for other projects. Again, what is the relevance of communicating initiatives these times? I'd like to repeat that because we have to make people aware, no, what the things that we're doing for the environment. We now have developed a sense of urgency to save the planet, and it doesn't stop in our households. It doesn't stop in our own rooms, in the four corners of our rooms. We have to tell the people that we're doing this and that because we want to save the environment, because we want to pave a greener and better future for the children. And maybe you will ask me, no, why upcycle? Bakit nakikiuso lang ba ako? Kasi parang medyo trending yung term na upcycle noong mga bandang 2015, 2016. But I realized there is something deeper than we know about upcycle, that we know of upcycle. Upcycle is not only a creative reuse of things that we otherwise want to that we otherwise want to throw away. Upcycle reinforces nature. First of all, upcycle reinforces nature as our model for designing things. For instance, a peacock's feather is actually brown, but the structure gives it a multicolored hue. So, this is one key takeaway from the book Cradle to Cradle, Remaking the Way We Make Things. Next, upcycle promotes material health, such that once a product reaches its end of life or end of service, its components become biological nutrients and technical nutrients. Biological nutrients are components that, when thrown in the soil, can actually nourish the soil, and technical nutrients that are healthy, and these are components that can be used to make another useful product. In the case of this eco luggage, the biological nutrients return back to the soil and would provide food for new seeds to germinate in certified forests and fields, ensuring the fair trade and quality of living of the people working in the farms. And the technical nutrients are the components that can be still used to make another product, while the rest go through the recycling process. Okay, let me just check the chat for a moment because I think there are many questions. Okay. All right. Okay, maybe we can, yeah, I believe that we have a question and answer forum, no? Anyway, definition of terms. There's upcycle, recycle, and downcycle. Well, again, upcycle adheres to waste equals food and reinforces the need to use energy sources that are naturally replenished on a human time scale. So, which is better? Upcycle, recycle, or downcycle? So I'm just going to give you the definition of upcycle. First of all, upcycle is the process of taking post-consumer products and turning them into products with more value than the original. And then downcycling is the recovery of material from post-consumer products that cannot be fully recycled. And then it leads to products of lesser quality than the original. For example, melting plastic bottles for use in polyester clothing. And then lastly, there is recycle, which is a process of breaking down a product into its base components. The in recycling also, products can be made into another product of comparable quality. For example, breaking down scrap paper into pulp to make new paper. So upcycle has a legit modern history. Um, the term was actually first coined by Rainer Pils. He's a German upcycler and an engineer, and it's further elaborated in the book by Michael Braungart and William McDonough. So this is not something I personally came up with. I know it's a very trending term. It's nothing new, especially in countries like India, Germany, and the Netherlands, especially in Germany, because this term was coined by Mr. Rainer Pils, and he is a German engineer and upcycler, as I've mentioned earlier. Ayun. So, based on what we have briefly learned about upcycle, I want to know about your perception barriers, or maybe critiques or comments or reactions on the term upcycle when you hear this. So please go to menti.com and please type the code 7548752. Perception barriers on upcycle. What are your comments, critiques, questions on upcycle? Because, for example, I heard from a fellow advocate, she says that upcycle is a band-aid solution because we're just delaying a product's trip to the landfill, and eventually it will still end up in the landfill. In other words, it's an inevitable trash. So little do we know that upcycle is more than that. It's actually promoting material health. And when I say material health, a product should have biological and technical nutrients. So I hope you're in menti.com. Please type 7548752 and let me check your answers. Perception barriers, meaning what are your critiques, what are your comments, what are your apprehensions? Is it something positive? Is it something negative? Do we still lack researches about upcycle? You have questions about it, and so on and so forth. I'm giving one more minute. Okay, so these are your inputs on, these are your apprehensions on upcycle. So number one, it's time consuming, especially if you're into upcycle as a creative outlet. Another barrier is your lack of creativity, especially if, again, you're using upcycle as a creative outlet. It's not sustainable. I wonder what made it not sustainable. What part of it? It's not practical. Interesting. Need more info for sure. Need more info because it's just a very small part of circularity or circular economy. In fact, in my course in circular economy, I'm looking for people who would talk about upcycle, but since it's about circular economy, they talked about it as a whole. And then I discovered that circular economy is linked to terms like regenerative farming, biomimicry, um, cradle to cradle. And then under cradle to cradle, we have the term upcycle, which is further elaborated in the book of William McDonough and Michael Braungart. So we really start small. Um, we have to know what's in cradle to cradle and what makes it work. And there goes upcycle. It needs more campaign. Yes, it is definitely a struggle. It's difficult to understand, let me add. It is difficult to understand, especially if you do not know how and where to start. And then the others have come up with positive insights on upcycle. Um, it facilitates environmental recovery. Perhaps when you upcycle, a product is given new look, and an attitude that's linked with upcycle is basically reusing waste. And I'm glad to see that, yeah, it is definitely positive. It's a positive system because it facilitates and it cooperates with making circularity work because it's under the umbrella of cradle to cradle, and cradle to cradle is under the bigger gamut of circular economy. Thank you so much for your answers. Now let's go back to the slides. So I'd like to share with you that upcycle touches on the three pillars of sustainability, namely people, planet, and profit. For the people part, upcycle is an outlet to creatively use things that people want to throw away. And then in profit, it involves systems change. It allows people to redesign, to remanufacture their things so that the resources are maintained and there's no need to spend more on resources. So it's cost effective. And for planet, it's a strategy for circularity because it's based or it's actually anchored in the principle of cradle to cradle. So um, these are the three pillars of sustainability that upcycle is linked with. And here are some related environmental values. Number one, upcycle encourages living side by side nature, not from it. We live with nature, not from her. And it's revolutionary. While we are experiencing an environmental breakdown, especially during the time of the pandemic, all the more should we ask producers to pivot business models and rethink circularity. And lastly, it is proactive as it touches on the three realms of sustainability. So, communicating my advocacy alone and doing these things is zero waste in itself, is a zero waste initiative. As I've been mentioning earlier, it doesn't stop in the four corners of our advocacies. The things that we do does not stop in our own households, does not stop in our own classrooms or in our own homes. We have to communicate them to other people, to make ripples, to make bigger waves, to protect for the purpose of conserving the environment. So we have developed a sense of urgency to save the planet, and as much as we can, while we can, we take our part in conserving our environment. So here are some quotes from Michael Braungart and Nigel Topping. Number one, pollution isn't the real problem. Flawed design is. Let me just elaborate on this. Take for example a plastic water bottle. What happens to this particular plastic water bottle after you've used it? Can it undergo perpetual cycles of reuse? When you recycle it, will it not, or will it release toxic substances into the air and into the ground? And if you're a manufacturer yourself, as you design and create, what will happen next to your product that you have designed and created? You have to think about that. And according to Nigel Topping, CEO of We Mean Business, if we don't create a product that is healthy, you cannot make it into another product that is healthy. So if you're a manufacturer yourself, and to the manufacturers out there, think of a product. These are the questions that you should ask to yourselves. What if you design and create something, what will happen next? If you don't create a product that is healthy, you cannot upcycle it into another product that is healthy. So take into consideration um, that a product should have material health, meaning it can undergo healthy cycles of reuse. That when it undergoes cycles of reuse, they do not these products do not release toxic substances into the ground and into the air. And these products should have biological and technical nutrients. Biological nutrients, these are components that will nourish the soil, and technical nutrients, these are components that can be made into another useful and healthy product. So here are the planned intentions of Upcycle Philippines while I'm here overseas. Well, make connections with, for example, youth organizations. I have tied up with Loving Our Vecinos. Vecino means neighbor in Mexican. If you see this particular picture, I attended their cleanup drive with this particular youth organization. And I've also contacted the resilient activist, Miss Sammy Aaron. Um, I have I am about to contribute a news article about upcycle and environmental conservation, at least from the Filipino perspective, and then tied up with various small to medium enterprises, or here in the United States. Well, that was in Chicago of last year. So just expand my network, find out how I can help, and I'm gonna continue my with my advocacy, communicating my advocacy to the Philippines. Whatever I learned from here, I would definitely share it with the Philippines. And to share with you, who knows, in the future I can participate. I can probably help in funding social enterprises back home as part of the financial arm of Upcycle Philippines. That's one of my intentions. Let's connect. The learning exchange does not stop here. I hope to see you in our Facebook group called Upcycle Philippines, and our Facebook page, Upcycle Philippines. We also have an Instagram, all very low key. It's all about communicating advocacy, very zero waste. And I'm still continuing living intentionally. It's a struggle. It was definitely challenging because number one, you're given a bigger or higher purchasing power, and kaliwat ka ng mga outlets, totoo yan. But guess what? Thrifting. I am still thrifting my clothes. And I'm happy to share with you that most of the things that I own here are thrifted and are hand-me-downs. At least that part na sustain ko. I hope there is a Rina Papio here, Miss Rina Papio here in the United, that I happen to meet here in the United States, particularly here in this neighborhood, so I can continue composting. Yon, it's a challenge, but let's carry on. Thank you very much, DTI and CPAB, for the opportunity again to communicate my advocacy. Let's keep up the good fight for the planet.
Thank you po, Ms. Ada, for your presentation. Good morning po ulit sa ating participants here in Zoom and everyone joining us via Facebook and YouTube Live. Short reminder lang po sa ating mga participants to stay muted unless you are addressing the speaker or the moderator directly. Please be also informed na makakapag-download po kayo ng copy ng presentation material after you accomplish the client satisfaction feedback form that will be posted in the chat box section. At para naman po mas maging interactive ang ating question and answer portion, we encourage everyone to click the raise hand button so we can call you to ask directly to our speaker. Pwede rin pong isend ang inyong questions sa chat box. Ayan, habang wala pa pong nag-raise hand, we will read some questions po from the chat box. Our first question po is from Marcela UC. This is for Green Space po. Is the app available in the provinces too?
Yung app, yes, dahil nature niya is mobile, basta mayroong link for Android App Store, for iPhone, baliktad, Android Play Store, tsaka iPhone app. Pero the actual services, yung Book a Bucket, nasa NCR pa lang kami. So even if you can download it, you can have it in your phone, pero hindi pa natin magagawa yung book and exchange and subscribe kasi yung operations namin NCR pa lang.
Thank you po, Ms. Rina. This question also is for Green Space po. What are type of food waste that can be used for composting?
Yes, sa bokashi composting, all food waste can be added. So preparation, halimbawa, raw food no ng mga fruit, vegetable peelings, leftovers, pwede rin. So yung pagkatas natin kumain, lahat ng mga kailangan natin itara, meat, chicken bones, fish, dairy, lahat yon pwede sa ating bokashi composting. Ang iwasan lang po natin ay liquid. So, kung ulam natin, may sabaw, may sarsa, i-drain out po muna natin yan. At saka yung mga tira nating beverages, wag na nating isama sa ating bucket. So, pero yon one benefit din or what's making it simple is you don't need to sort through your food waste. You can put all your food waste in the bucket. Pag mas marami kang protein-rich na pagkain na nilalagay doon sa bucket, medyo kailangan mo lang damihan yung iyong bokashi brand. So, let's say kung ang usual natin is pa isa-isang dakot lang, pag may mga chicken bones, may mga isda, mga 2 to 3 pwede. So, wala namang overdose nung bokashi brand except ayaw naman nating too much kasi sayang, mauubos agad.
Thank you po, Ms. Rina. This question naman po is from Ms. Imelda Pitiker. Papa, where we could buy the bokashi brand po?
Okay. So, ipopost po natin dito yung yung site, pero yung online store po namin is www.greenspace.ph. So, pag pumunta kayo doon, makita niyo yung mga products and at least mapipili nyo kung alin ba yung kailangan nyo. So yung bokashi brand natin, nabibili siya ng 1 kilong bag o kaya kung wala pa kayong lalagyan, merong naka-jar na ang laman ng jar ay 1.2 kilograms or yung namang iba, maramihan na kung bumili, meron ding pail na 6 kilos yung laman. Kung meron kayong lalagyan, okay din na i-refill nyo na lang yung lalagyan nyo.
Thank you po ulit, Ms. Rina. This question naman po is from GORGS, also for Green Space po. Ano po ang approximate thickness ng layering ng fermented food waste and soil? Pwede po bang ang soil ilagay lang sa bottom, then the whole contents of the fermented bucket, then add soil again on top? Thank you po.
Iwasan natin yung makapal na layers. Okay lang na isang buhos lang, pero kung halimbawa medyo malaki yung space mo, kung makakalat mo yung isang baldeng food waste doon sa buong span ng iyong, kunyari may hinukay ka or may malaki kang lalagyan. So, good measure para kasi sa food waste, mga 1 to 2 inches na nakapal, yun, tas soil ulit. Ang gusto natin, yung iba actually ginagawa nila, yung soil and yung food waste, hinahalo muna ng hinahalo, tapos yun yung iniiwan. So, although matrabaho, baka wala kayong time or lakas na maghalo ng ganon. Pero gusto kasi talaga natin na ma-expose dun sa soil microbes yung mga food waste. So, kung makapal yung parang hindi sila makaka-work agad.
Thank you po ulit, Ms. Rina. Follow-up question lang po. Pwede din po bang di na i-layer ang fermented pelong soil, but instead i-mix na lang sila?
Yeah. Okay din yung mix. Basta ang importante doon ay yun nga, magtagpo yung food waste at yung soil. And isang beses lang dahil kung sa umpisa, minix nyo na, tapos nilubog nyo na, iiwan nyo na. And additionally po pala, no, kung ginagawa nyo to sa garden nyo, meaning meron dong mga dried leaves, no? So isama nyo na din ang dried leaves doon sa inyong hukay para meron kayong layers of food waste, of dried leaves, of soil. Pero yun, yes, pwedeng haluin siya.
Thank you po ulit, Ms. Rina. This question naman po is for Green Space also po. Is the subscription to the app free? How much does the compost bucket or bokashi bucket cost po?
Yung app, yes, nada-download siya ng free. Tapos pag nandoon na kayo and you plan to subscribe, pipili na kayo ng plan. So iba-iba po yung plan, no? Subscription plan. Parang plan sa inyong telepono. So merong 3 months, may 6 months, may 12 months. Yung pinakamababa nating plan, yun din yung ina-encourage namin na umpisahan ng mga bago pa lang. 3 months siya na plan. Ang nakaset natin is 1 bucket yung mapupuno mo every month. So sa loob ng 3 months, 3 buckets yung i-exchange mo. That's 1,680 pesos for the whole 3 months na. So you subscribe 1,680, papadala namin sa iyo yung initial buckets mo. Tapos every time puno, i-exchange mo. I-replenish din yung bokashi brand.
Thank you po, Ms. Rina. This question naman po is for Upcycle Philippines. May we please know what other upcycling activities are being practiced by Upcycling Philippines, particularly those which led to livelihood or businesses?
Thanks for the question. I had a t-shirt yarn making with two communities before the pandemic in 2019, and I was invited to do t-shirt yarn making last year. However, I had to decline it because the schedule is not in favor. It's not in favor of mine. So it was a t-shirt yarn making. So we gather in the two activities that I had in the Philippines. We gathered old shirts and then we transformed it into yarn and then we hand knit them. And this particular community echoed the same process in a special educational community in Las Piñas or in Alabang. The name of that organization is Play, Learn, and Serve. It's in Old Balara community with mothers. Ang sabi nga nila sa akin ititigil nila yung pagmamarites. Wala pa yung term na marites nun But ititigil na raw nila yung pag-chismis because they already know how to hand knit, and hand knitting rewired their brains. So I hope they were able to echo that activity. So we did yarn or t-shirt yarn making, and we hand knit them and then transform them into jewelry pieces. And by the way, I'd like to share with you that t-shirt yarn is also sold in Daiso shops. And so if you can make your own t-shirt yarn, the good quality ones, you can sell them for like 80 pesos depending on the grams. And then there's also according to my friend, there's also a particular shop in Japan who imports t-shirt yarn from a European country pa, and then they sell it for 250 pesos. So if you're able to make a t-shirt yarn from good quality old shirts, then you can profit from them. And these were the two activities that I've had back in the Philippines, aside from greener reads and the bazaar that I have with my students? Thanks for the question.
Thank you po, ma'am. For our next question naman po, this is from Miss Edna Dizon. How does one individual or organization assess the readiness for upcycling? Are there a set of criteria used to see that one is ready to go into upcycling? What are the key considerations to set up a good upcycling system?
Thank you very much for that question. Are you talking about upcycle as a creative outlet or upcycle as a system for circularity? If you're going for the latter, there is a particular certification, but it's not upcycle per se. It's called cradle to cradle certification, and you have to pass criteria, the following criteria, which is water resource management, material health, material reutilization, and then there's fair trade. So if you could look up cradle to cradle to certification under that umbrella is upcycle. So if you as a company, you as a manufacturer want to be cradle to cradle certified, you have to pass the following criteria that I've just mentioned: material health, material reutilization, renewable energy use, water management, and fair trade.
Thank you po, Miss Ada. This question naman po is from Miss Jennifer Liao. As what we have heard is only about recycle, how is upcycle can be applied in an office? Particularly, we have lots of papers.
Oh, that part is perhaps upcycle as a creative outlet, or maybe if you source your paper from from a particular manufacturer, you can maybe gather the papers that you have, and if possible ask the manufacturer how they recycle it. So let's turn the tables now, no? Let's turn the tables. Let's give the burden naman to those who create the products. Parang ganon. Parang kayo naman, let's not put the burden on the consumer, because as a manufacturer, you have to you have to take into account consumer value. Consumer value is providing information about the product, especially how to dispose of it. Now let's turn the table. Hey, manufacturer, what are we going to do with these used papers from your company? So we use them already. Is there a way we can return them to your company and recycle them for us? And then we buy them again, and that's what we use. Who knows?
Thank you for that, Miss Ada. This question po is also from Miss Jennifer Liao. As an individual, how we able to participate the upcycle?
You are already participating in this movement, because by attending this alone, you are already actually participating, right? And the next thing that you will do is to communicate what you have learned to other people and research more about it, particularly upcycle as part of circularity, because it does not stop as upcycle. It does not stop in the part as upcycle as a creative outlet. It has to be researched more. It has to be discovered more, especially in the Philippines, because I read from Gunter Pauli. He's the father of sustainability. Um, Gunter Pauli says that developing countries actually have more resources to do upcycle. And what part and in what part can and in what aspect do we have more resources in to make upcycle work, especially in the Philippines? So yeah, takes a lot of research. But yeah, going back to your question, you're already doing upcycling per se by attending this webinar. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Miss Ada. For our next question naman po, what are the common upcycling activities in the USA?
Thank you for asking. It's more of DIY creative outlet. Actually, if you going back to my presentation earlier, you have Marvin's World and Chicago Exchange. Marvin's World uses or transforms eyeglass cases into miniature house decors. And then there is Chicago Exchange, who uses scraps of paper who transforms scraps of paper into notebooks. So more of DIY creative outlet. I'm actually on the hunt for upcycle as circularity. I think that's more in countries like the Netherlands or Germany, even India, when upcycle is already part of circularity, as in science, as in backed up by science, as in the scientific upcycle part, parang ganon, so to speak.
Thank you, Miss Ada. This question naman po is for green space. Are you familiar with black soldier larvae in composing biodegradable waste? It is a larvae that can use in feeding for chickens, fish, and other farm animals. It is a larvae that high in fat and protein. I don't know if you are familiar with this po.
Yes po, BSF composting. Actually, for BSF composting and vermicomposting, pwedeng isabay sa bokashi. Parang ang nagiging value po kasi ng bokashi is sa source habang hindi mo kailangang araw-araw i-dispose, ilabas yung basura mo or food waste mo, lalo na kung hindi readily available sa sarili mong bakuran, ano. So, using the bokashi method, ipunin mo dun sa bucket yung food waste mo until mapuno. Once fermented na, you can actually bring it to a vermi farm or BSF composting kasi the worms, they can much easier for them to digest yung fermented na food waste. And yung output pa, syempre po napakaganda ng output na vermicast ng mga worms. So yun din for yun nga yung BSF. Yun, they can also actually pwede mo na i-direct kung meron kang BSF mo sa backyard mo. Meron ka di ba meron pong ginagawang bin din for BSF na naka-design siya such that makaka-self-harvest yung mga larvae. Ayun, shoot ka na lang ng shoot din ng food waste mo dun sa bin, tapos harvest mo yung larvae. Feed mo. Tama nga, feed niya na po sa inyong alagang manok.
Thank you po, Miss Rina. This question is also for green space po. Yung bokashi bucket, pwede po bang gumamit ng improvise at paano po gawin ito?
Definitely. Basta ang kailangan po mahigpit yung takip. Kung sakaling hindi mahigpit yung takip, kasi yung nangyayaring fermentation sa loob ng bucket, anaerobic po siya. Pero at the same time, yung ating mikrobyo na galing dun sa EM1, they thrive both aerobically and anaerobically. So, kahit araw-araw nating binubuksan, okay lang na nagkakaroon ng exposure sa air. Pero once na puno na, tatakpan kasi natin siya at itatabi natin siya for at least 2 weeks. So, yung time na yon na nakatakip siya, we want it talagang sealed na takip. Kung sakali mang yung nagamit yung bucket, hindi ganun sealed yung takip, pwede namang gawa ng paraan. Yung iba, i-wrap siya ng garbage bag. Pero syempre sayang sa garbage bag, di ba? Wrap ko ng garbage bag, sabihin para humipit siya. Basta gusto natin na hindi ma-expose. Dahil ang nangyayari po, pag expose sa hangin, nagiging very active po yung ating microbes. So, mabilis namang mag-develop ng molds. Baka magkaroon ka ng mold factory imbis na mag-compost ka ng food waste mo. While white molds are okay generally, pero ayaw mo namang mapuno ng molds yung iyong ginagawang fermentation. Idugtong ko na yung nakita kong tanong, no, kung dapat ba daw may faucet. Yung faucet po kasi is our way to access the bokashi juice. Maaring wala, pero sayang kasi, lalo kung ginagawa mo ito sa bahay, sayang na hindi mo makuha yung juice kasi nga very useful siya. Magagamit mo around the house, magagamit mo sa garden. Kung man hindi mo lalagyan ng faucet, merong mga gumagawa na pinagpapatong yung dalawang balde. So, yung ibabaw na balde may butas, para yun na yung strainer. So, kung gusto mo nang kunin yung juice, iangat mo lang yung balde sa taas na may butas, nandun yung mga solid waste mo. Yung juice tumulo na dun sa ilalim na balde. So, yung balde yun, pwede mo nang i-fill ulit ng tubig, make sure non-chlorinated water kasi baka mamatay yung mga mikrobyo natin sa chlorine. So, yung balde, tas yun na ngayon yung ipangdilig mo sa garden mo or yun nga, ibuhos sa toilet para yung mga mikrobyo, they go to your septic tank. Tapos we need microbes sa ating mga septic tanks, di ba? Dahil habang gamit tayo ng gamit ng mga chemical-based products sa dishwashing soap, laundry soap, tapos napunta lahat yun sa septic tank, namamatay yung mga mikrobyo, later on, problema tayo, bakit bumabaho na yung bakit nagbabackflow na and everything. Kasi wala nang mikrobyo, pinatay na natin lahat with all our chemical-based products. Kaya din iwas din tayo sa mga chemical-based products. And by shifting, tapos you're adding the microbes from the bokashi juice. Yun. Pero just to clarify the question, kahit wala, pwede. Pero sayang yung juice. Tsaka pagka wala, makikita nyo na pwedeng maging very wet yung loob ng inyong bucket. So you can address that naman by adding more yung mga makakapag-absorb ng the carbon-rich na mga materials.
Thank you po, Ms. Rina. This question naman po is for Upcycle Philippines. How to qualify cradle-to-cradle certification, and may we know the agency who handles it?
Thanks for the question. The institute that gives certification or that gives cradle to cradle certification is Cradle to Cradle Institute. So the name is Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute. I'm just going to type it down in the chat box. Cradle Products Innovation Institute. We have I'm not in any way related to this particular company here in the Philippines, but Nature's Legacy PH is a C2C certified company back home. So that's Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute. And how to qualify, then perhaps you should meet the criteria that I've mentioned earlier, which is material health, material reutilization, water management, use of renewable energy, and social fairness, fair trade. So these are the criteria of Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute.
Thank you po, Ms. Ada. This question naman po is for the both of Green Space and Upcycle. What about the diapers, napkins? How do we manage this type of waste?
Sige, I'll go ahead muna. Actually, those things are composable. Merong mga matutsaga talagang they separate the plastic part para ma-decompose yung the rest of the part, no? Unfortunately, it's not something na pinapaan namin sa Bokashi bucket. While it can be composted, yung mga may human waste or syempre mga toilet paper, di ba, nagagamit sa gutter, we can compost them. Yung mga nasa bucket natin, we bring them to farms, and edible food ang ating mga tanim doon usually. Yung mga ganong mako-compost natin from those other waste materials, syempre pwede, pero maganda gamitin natin sa non-edible na mga plants natin. So flowers, for example, mga even pet waste, pag ginamit mo yung compost sa mga flowers, yon magiging maganda yung mga bulaklak. Pero for right now, yun nga, sa green space, hindi pa namin sinasama yung mga types of waste na yun. Hopefully soon, later on.
And thanks, Miss Rina. And to add to that, hopefully we learn how to segregate our wastes well, and then maybe we find out how the collection systems are in the Philippines, so that these kinds of wastes are placed where they should be placed.
Thank you po, Ms. Rina and Ms. Ada. Time check lang po, it's already 11:46 a.m. Last call na po sa mga gusto pang magtanong from the consumers or private sectors. Otherwise po, we will close the session na po.
May nakita ba akong question about coffee grounds? Yes po, pwede. And actually, habang hinahaluan mo ng coffee grounds, kung nag-coffee ka, minix mo dun sa iyong bucket, nakakatulong din siya sa amoy.
Miss Rina, I have a question. How about sawdust?
Sawdust, ang concern natin sa sawdust is, kasi cup food, di ba? That food may be treated with chemical. So parang sawdust came from chemically treated kind of food, baka hindi siya maging helpful doon sa buong mix. Pero since it's carbon material, pwede pa rin gamitin. So, siguro, in terms of output, doon na lang titingnan na, okay, gamitin natin to sa mga non-edibles natin. Pero ito, alam natin food waste and okay gamitin sa edible plant.
Thank you.
Thank you po, Ms. Rina. This question naman po is for Upcycle Philippines. Is your organization dealing with the academe insofar as use of research documentation and other R&D's outputs? Since schools now are undertaking technology and product innovations utilizing wastes, is Upcycling Philippines supporting this endeavor? How do we go about partnering with your company for startup development on waste utilization as a business or livelihood?
Thank you so much for the question. I'm looking at it because I am planning to partner with Miss Stephanie Fabia's organization in Zamboanga naman. If that goes successful in the long run, I'd probably publicize how I can go about partnering with other organizations, particularly schools who utilize technology and who come up with product innovations, particularly in utilizing wastes. But that's one thing I'm going to look at because it's gonna be added. I'm planning to widen the scope of my portfolio as an advocate. But I've already spoken with Miss Stephanie Fabi about it and other social enterprises, micro social enterprises back home. So hopefully, 2 years from now, as I mentioned earlier in my last slide, planned intention, one of the planned intention is to come up with a financial arm of Upcycle Philippines that is to fund micro social enterprises in the Philippines. Thanks for the question. And thank you for reinforcing that momentum. I'm going to, please keep in touch with me.
Thank you po, Ms. Ada. Maraming salamat po sa mga nagtanong at mga magtatanong pa. Again, Ms. Rina and Ms. Ada, thank you for answering all the questions. We hope na marami pong natutunan ng ating consumers ngayong umaga. Before we close the session po, may we ask kung saan po kayo pwede makontak ng mga participant para sa other concerns nila and to give a short message na rin po. Ms. Rina?
Okay. Again, thank you sa pag-imbita sa amin. We're really happy to be part of this. Sana po marami kayong natutunan. And please reach out to us via email, hello@greenspace.ph, or you can look for our Facebook page, Greenspace Pilipinas. Meron din po Instagram, greenspace.ph. So, yun po again, yung ating battle cry, let's make the change from landfillers to land healers. Our planet deserves it. Wala na po tayong ibang planeta, yun lang. Sana po, kung wala pang soulmate, maging soilmates na po tayong lahat.
Thank you po, Ms. Rina. Ms. Ada?
Thank you, DTI and CPAB for the privilege, for the opportunity to have me here and to communicate about the advocacy. Let's keep the energy exchange going. So please reach out via our Instagram account, upcycle_Philippines, and Facebook, Upcycle Philippines. I'm happy to share with you that the education arm of Upcycle Philippines is more or less concretized. That's why we are expanding Upcycle Philippines arm to providing support to hopefully to micro social enterprises back home. So let's pray for that, and let's not forget to keep up the fight for our planet, the good fight for the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you po for being with us today, Ms. Rina and Ms. Ada. We appreciate that you took the time to share your knowledge about composting and upcycling. This is to formally close our webinar for today. Muli, maraming salamat sa ating very capable speakers ngayong umaga, Ms. Caterina T. Papio and Ms. Maria Adaviv Melialasam. At mula po sa Consumer Protection Group, maraming salamat po sa ating mga participant na nakasama natin sa webinar session na ito. Huwag niyo pong kalimutang samahan kaming muli sa aming mga susunod na webinar. Our announcements will be posted in our social media accounts. For more updates, please like, follow, and subscribe to our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube account, DTI Consumer Care and DTI Philippines. Also, kindly accomplish and submit the survey form para makakuha din po kayo ng link at para ma-download ang presentation na ginamit ngayong umaga. Thank you so much po everyone and stay safe.
Para sa ating mamamayang Pilipino, para iwas daya dapat wais at alisto. Mainam maging mapagmatsyag at mapanuri tayo, palakasin ang boses ng ating mga